Hi, Marianne. It's Amy. How are you? I can't hear you. You must be muted. I'm just returning back from medical leave today. I've been out for the last 6 weeks, and so I haven't heard from folks. Um, Looks like it's just you and I. We'll give folks another few minutes, but I haven't heard that we're canceling the meeting or that folks aren't able to attend. Do you have any info to share?
No, as far as I know, we were going to all meet and then talk about what we want to talk about this next meeting.
Okay, we'll give them a few more minutes, and I can send a couple prompts if we don't hear from folks, but we'll just hang out.
So where are you at?
I'm in Kaiser, Oregon.
Oh, yeah, I was
Outside
going
of
to say, it
Salem.
looks like maybe Salem. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm in Salem. This is just a fake background, just so you don't see my personal junk.
We have an overcast day too. Here comes another person.
Yeah, it's Debbie.
Debbie.
Hi, Debbie.
Hello, welcome back, Amy. I missed you.
Thank you. I missed you too. Thank you. It's good to be back. Good to be
Good.
feeling better. So thank you.
Good. I'm glad you're feeling better.
Thank you. I think we're just hanging out for a minute or two to see if Mercedes is able to pop on. I don't know about other folks. I didn't have any other messages, so I guess we'll just hang out.
Okay.
Wait for folks to pop in. Thank you.
Sounds good.
You having a good summer?
Busy.
Yeah.
My daughter's kept me super busy, but we're 1 week. We're on the final countdown. I'm driving her off for college here in another week. So.
Oh, wow. How
I
exciting.
know. Yeah.
What college is she going to?
It's called Feather River College. It's in Northern California. It's a big agriculture equine program, which, with all her, she can be on the rodeo team there, which is important. She gets to bring both of her horses. So
Oh, wow.
she's super excited. And I'm a little nervous. It's, 7 or 8 hours from home. So.
Wow. How cool is that, though, that they
Yeah.
cater to all of those agricultural programs? That's excellent.
Mhm. Yeah, she's super excited.
Very good.
We're just starting to eat all of our fresh tomatoes out of the garden. So this is my favorite time of year.
Oh, I love garden tomatoes, and I do not have a garden. So
go to the farmer's market this weekend. They'll be there.
Okay.
Good idea. There's nothing like fresh tomatoes from the garden. They just taste like sunshine to me.
Me
It's a
too.
summer tradition, that's for sure. So good. What variety are you growing, Marianne?
We actually like Cherokee Purple and Black Creme, some of the ones that aren't so bright red, but they have fabulous flavor. So my husband planted one called Black Creme, Cherokee Purple, and then he has a Ukrainian purple, which is a Roma tomato, but it's huge. It's huge.
Wow.
So lots of fun. And then we just had our first sweet corn last week, and peaches are going to be very short season. So we had our first peaches, and just because of the heat, it just really fried everything.
Oh, wow. We still got lots of good stuff to enjoy. Well, I think I'm going to send a couple prompts. I'll reach out to Mercedes and see. I'm going to go off camera for a sec. Thank you.
I really wanted to talk to everybody today. We're really having a problem with getting our contracts. So we haven't been able to bill anything for any of our payroll since July 1st. One program is $90,000. The other one's more than that. And they're telling me that because of OHCS and them getting the stuff and the information late, they may not have it ready till mid-September. So we can't bill anything.
That's, sorry, I was muted. That's at OHCS?
Well, OHCS was the one that was they got a big chunk of money and they're giving it out. This
Oh.
is for homeless services.
Mm-hmm.
And we found out on June 28th that we were approved, but we didn't get the contract till July. We signed it on July 15, and it's been 3 weeks. We don't have the contract yet. And then we just heard today on our other program that we won't know anything or have a contract till mid-September. And so we're just supposed to keep working and somehow fund a couple $100,000 of payroll.
Oh my goodness. Who is your contract with, Marianne?
These are both with Lane County.
Lane County.
I heard a very
18.
interesting thing. I went to lunch with a couple people. One of them worked for Lane County um, when she first did the HMIS for Lane County. And then she went to work for OHCS and she just retired. But she said, we have 3 separate HMIS systems in Oregon. We have Portland, we have Lane County, and we have OHCS. And there's no data sharing. They're not able to harvest all the information and get it all shared so that we can really know, so that the governor can really see what's going on.
Wow.
So I think what we're doing is really important.
It is.
18. You all hear me?
We can. Hi, Mercedes. How are you?
Good. Apologies for being a little bit late. All right. So
I expected more people.
me too. I thought people would want us, because I'm going to show you all recommendations, and at least this group gets one more bite at the apple before we go into the big meeting. Yeah, I thought a couple more people might want to know what's up. But here is what did I do? Okay, so here's my idea for the meeting. We will do our regular roll call and public comment, and then we'll hop into the recommendations. And actually, I'm going to pull up my screen so you all can see what I'm looking at. I've spent some time putting some little slides together, and so this has most of what we'd want on the agenda. So this is the order I think we should go in. The payment models, the uniform applications, the standard contract language, take a break, then do the sufficient reporting requirements and the wages, which I think the wages is going to take the most amount of discussion, because actually we came out of the last meeting with a lot of green. So the first 3 on the top were all the green ones. And then the sufficient reporting had a yellow and the wages had red. So we're kind of going in order of what will hopefully be quicker and then take more of our time at the end. And then we'll do the prioritization plotting together. And then I'd like to add an element here, because we are doing the narrative report and we have a lot of info for that, but I think it would be nice to get a few quotes from people who've been participating in this that we can kind of use throughout the report. So I thought we could collect just a short survey. Anyone who wanted to share a comment for kind of more of the narrative element wouldn't be required. I would love, I think maybe Debbie, some of your feedback on, I would love to make this open, not just to the task force members, but even some of the staff. Because I know we've had some turnover in different staff from different agencies coming, but there's some folks who've been with us the whole time and may themselves have, and we've gotten great recommendations from some of those staff as we've moved through this process. I don't know if that's like a faux pas though, if people have to ask their boss's boss before making a comment that ends up in some official report. But I just wanted to clarify that before I asked to open that one up to everybody. Okay, and then we would adjourn. And I guess I don't know what happens for September. So that's another I think we have a meeting on our calendar for September, but I also feel like we're supposed to be kind of done by September. I'm not sure what the last meeting is supposed to be, I guess. Oh,
So
but
does
there's
it give
that.
an
So
actual date?
Date for the meeting in September or for the
The
report due
date for
date?
when we have to turn this in?
It's due no later than the 15th, but that actually falls on a Sunday. So I'm thinking it's going to be the 13th, which is the Friday prior. And right now we have our final task force meeting set for the 10th. So that would be a busy week.
So it'd be really nice if we had something all written up that we could, you know, tell everybody, here's the package, here's what we've written. We're just letting you all know what we're going to submit.
yeah, because we wouldn't really have time to do much in that last meeting because we kind of want to be done.
Right. I think it would just be a polite thing to say, this is what all the work has come to, and here's the report we're ready to submit. You know, not necessarily asking for more feedback, just giving them, here's what the whole process was, and here's where we ended up.
Yeah. Okay.
And when and how is that going to be? You said that we had a professional writer to help us.
There's some staff at DAF who have been tasked with taking all of the random notes that I'm sending them and turning it into a complete report. But yeah, so this is the kind of order that will go in. And then the next slide is just a reminder of our decision-making process and our group agreements. Okay, and so then here's where we get into the meaty stuff. So this is kind of where I've consolidated down from all of our notes from last time. So the first one is the 15% or NICRA de minimis. And so I pulled, I think, the language that you had asked for, Marianne, which is specifically the reference to the OMB sections there. And then just kind of said, update this wherever you need to update it, because I don't actually know where it needs to be updated. And then the next one was the piece that we had about agencies tracking on-time payments and the potential of like a fee to be paid. We had a lot of comments about like what that fee would be tied to. So I kind of softened it a little bit by basically saying that stipulations on the payment schedules and late payments should be included in the contracts and agreements. But then put in like this 5% thing, because this is what the state of Oregon charges businesses and individuals if we make late payments that we owe to the state. So I landed there instead of, some people were mentioning like small claims court or like other types of percentages. And this one felt kind of clean because it's like, this is what you would charge me if I was late. So, and then if it changes, then it changes, right? And like that ends up being something that the state can then kind of control. And then the last one here about the first quarter of payments for contracts coming in advance.
That would be so good. I mean, I was just telling Debbie right now, we're going to be $200,000 into just payroll, not even other expenses, before we ever get any repayment on this new contract year.
Oh yeah, and this is something that I think is something, one, we heard that some agencies are already doing something like this. So one, it's a good thing. It's like, it's a muscle that we're already practicing. It's just something that's done as an exception rather than as the rule. This is also something that I do also hope local governments would jump onto. Because yeah, I mean, we're at the very beginning of the fiscal year right now. I have one of my 4 contracts that's actually done. So everybody else's contract, I'm doing work for free until it gets done. Okay, and then our uniform application procedures. So I really kind of I eliminated a lot of the detail-y language that we had in the previous slides. These are kind of rolled up. But one is just to have a single statewide grant management, a base platform, and then a little bit of language in there about like why, like we're kind of combining our procurement and program, and then we're creating a single place where reporting and training materials live. And then we're also reducing a lot of that admin burden on organizations by giving us like one place where we put all of our info. And then we have the item here about the program year. And so this is another one, I think it was OHA who said they had started kind of offsetting things to start more like on the federal fiscal year, that October to September timeline. So this is kind of a similar pulling on that kind of idea. Again, I eliminated a lot of kind of like the why in this and just kind of put what the recommendation was itself. And then the last one, which was to create the new revised statute and administrative rules for grants. And then again, kind of took out a lot of the specific language that we had in there. We could add some of that back, or, I think one is just like trying to differentiate how are contracts different than grants and giving clear guidelines on those. And then also the advance payment kind of piece that really should be standard for grants, and I think is kind of negotiable for contracts. And then our standard contract language. So this, this is where we're like, let's just like take a review of the templates and training materials and see where we can identify those languages that can be kind of updated to be more aligned with nonprofit business practices. I think knowing that a lot of these contracts started their life in more of like that vendor relationship with more for-profit businesses. And then some additional pieces here about the clearly delineating which terms are negotiable and not. I actually just had one of these moments where I like went back to somebody. I was like, oh, can we change this line? And they were like, no. And I was like, uh-oh, why not? And like that kind of piece. But I think it'll be easier for both sides if there's a sense of where there is discretion and where something is maybe, set in statute, and just like that language has to be what it is. And then the other piece about kind of working in the insurance requirements that are above and beyond standard business practice into the award. Again, it's another one that we heard some agencies were already doing. Sounds like more on the grant side than on the contract side, but at least a couple had mentioned this was part of their kind of funding calculations. Again, looking at those advance payment, I feel like I should edit this one to be like that kind of first quarter so that it aligns with the other slide now that I'm reading it. And this is really was looking at where the state is like dictating access to a program. So the state has a greater interest in not seeing a pause in those services. And again, I think it's just kind of going back to that same, like if you haven't started doing work yet, maybe you don't need some advance payment. Maybe you need advance payment to do program design and planning, but maybe that's even a different bucket of money. So I'm really trying to kind of narrow this one down to like shelter programs, food programs, the preschool promise stuff, like the stuff that the state itself is like, here's who's allowed to participate and how they're allowed to participate. And so it's the state's interest to make sure that those programs don't have a lull or a breakdown. And then the reimbursement only contracts. So this is a little bit of kind of like going back to that cost recovery, but trying to identify like where the state has identified that they're not going to fully cover the expenses of a program. They also then can't control 100% of the program. I think in these cases, what that really is it probably should be a grant. It should probably be a contribution to work if the goal is not to actually pay for the whole source of services. But I think in earlier meetings, we talked about how we stair step some of these things. And so before there is going to be a set of grant rules, or before folks get more clarity on moving things that they've been doing in a contract into a grant, this would kind of bridge into that where you can kind of start to delineate, oh, this is something where, like I just saw a whole bunch of procurements from ODE where it was like, you're capped at requesting a certain amount of money, which effectively means like we're not going to pay for the full cost of what you're doing, but you can request up to this amount to contribute to what you're doing. And so that's the place where that should be really treated more like a grant, but is definitely treated like a contract today. So this maybe kind of bridges us into helping to differentiate those practices.
So is there anything in here, and just help me remember. So I had lunch with a person that started HMIS in Lane County, and then she went to work for OHCS. And she said, one of the problems is we don't have any input from the program service providers. We just have people sitting in a room thinking how it's going to be. instead of asking the people that are having input from the people that are actually doing the program delivery, whatever it is.
You mean when they're like designing a procurement?
When they're designing the procurement, when they're designing the monitoring, when they're yeah, all of that.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, I think that the the new position and the new kind of like board thing we recommended setting up, I think could contribute to something like that. This like reviewing the handbooks, the templates, and the trainings could potentially address something like that. I do think that there's a little bit of a difficulty, at least in what I heard from a lot of the state agency staff, is there's this like, how do we have those kind of iterative, generative conversations, but also adhere to this like set of rules we have around essentially not engaging with potential contractees and grantees, right? Like we have to keep things like fair and competitive. And so there has to be like those times in which they're not providing those kind of guidance. And I think we had talked about like some communities of practice and like having grant managers engaging with all of their contractees or grantees together. I don't know if that language has kind of stayed with us to this end point. I can think about where that might live, but I also wonder if that's more in our narrative report, that as more of a change in culture, there just needs to be more like non-compliance related conversations that are happening with organizations doing this work and the state agencies that are running it. Because I feel like that stuff is almost like outside of all the grants and contracts. It's all the work that should be happening beforehand, right? And like I'm having this conversation at the local level.
The reason this comes up is, in management qualifications, whenever we answer an RFP, they have the question about the makeup of your board, the makeup of your staff, the percentage that is, multi-ethnic, the percentage that has input or lived experience, that kind of thing. And I think that absolutely belongs at a higher level before we contract.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I maybe the narrative.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point because it did come up earlier. And yeah, let me think about that one a little bit more. Okay, so then we have our reporting requirements. This was the one that was kind of yellow. So I think we might need a little bit more here. But this was the like trying to cost out some of the reporting requirements. So you have to kind of have a conversation with your grant manager or your contract manager and the contractee or grantee about like, this is what we're asking you to report on. What of these things are kind of part of your regular practice and what of these things would be new? And so for like, this is exactly the conversation I'm having with somebody right now. This is the thing I wanted to try to take out of a contract. It asked for something that we don't normally do. It was a new thing. And it was like, so these other things you can ask me to do, no problem. You could even never ask for them, but still have me do because they're like policies and procedures and, like trauma informed training and like stuff that I already do with my staff and I would do with my staff, whether you asked for it or not. But then here's this thing that only you are asking for just this grant and contract. So this is work that is unique to this. And so I have to craft it out differently. And so just trying to kind of create that space where those conversations would potentially happen. And then the other one, which we heard a lot from people, was having templates and guides published and essentially static during your grant or contract year, right? And so like, don't give me a financial reporting template and then 3 months later be like, oh, we decided to use this new one, but I'm already into a contract year with you. Like, if you want to do that, we have to discuss that at the beginning of the new contract year, not during the year when I'm already trying to complete these reports. And then the last one there was like, if you are looking for the kind of reporting that looks for participant change over time, then you actually have to have an investment that also exists over time, right? That like, if you want to see I think this is especially important in a lot of like youth serving programs. Like we want to see social emotional well-being, get better. It's like, well, you're not going to see that in 12 months. And you're certainly not going to see that if it took 6 months for us to get the contract. And so I actually only have maybe like 3 months of data for you when you start asking for these kinds of reports, right? And so like elongating those timelines, if what we want is more in-depth understanding of does, initiative A or B actually result in behavior change or social emotional change or things like that. And then this one, it doesn't feel done, but this is where I've left it because this feels like where we need the most kind of conversation to land somewhere comfortable. But essentially what this recommendation still does is it's a recommendation for another body to be set up to do the work, to kind of establish what a floor would be for publicly funded work that both the nonprofit and the state agency must follow. I think this is where, we kind of, I think where I've landed is we kind of need a third party entity in this space, that just expecting the contract side and the nonprofit side to find the wages necessary I don't think it's working. I think because not everybody is like, although someone might be giving you a line item for a wage, some state agencies like actually ask me for who those staff are and others don't, right? And so I think that doesn't really allow for that agency to be able to say, oh, I know for sure that, nobody on this contract is making less than X. Because I might be using that one wage line item to pay like 4 different people who are also being paid out of a different contract for something else, right? And so I think getting us to the point where we actually have like a third party that we're both accountable to. So I know that I am not setting my wages too low for a certain type of work. And then I also know that I'm not going to walk into a conversation where my contract or my grant is not going to pay me a sufficient enough amount of money to also meet that same requirement. Because I think that's what we heard from folks, is like just setting a requirement on the nonprofit side doesn't change anything about the financial calculations, but just trying to change the financial calculations doesn't necessarily guarantee that those dollars make it to wages, because it's not always a straight line. So that's where I think I've kind of landed with this one. But I would, love to hear other thoughts.
So in the last meeting, I posted something that the state publishes that had many, many, many pages of all the wages and the median and all that. So couldn't we tie it to some percentage of the median at the state level?
I think that you could. I think there was just, I heard a lot of hesitancy when that was brought up, that like, what if my positions don't directly align with positions in that list? Or what if the body of work that I'm doing doesn't feel reflected in where the state is putting those? Because like for some of us, the reason that we're doing this work is because the state doesn't do it. So there are no analogous positions. I think just looking at amounts of money, could make sense. But then I think the other piece of that is, who is that requirement imposed on? And I think that's why having this like wage and standards board, they're able to say this standard is imposed on both of these entities, rather than this. I think one concern is that like the state were to say, so these wages, these positions have to be paid at these standards. But then again, nothing actually changes with the contract calculations. And so it's just on the nonprofit to figure out how to meet that new requirement. So I think that that's definitely an input that like a body like this could take and build on, as far as like what that floor would be. Yeah. And then I think earlier in the presentation, there was a call out for like having COLAs and inflation adjustments. And then this would essentially give this body that responsibility. They would publish what those are. But again, then both the nonprofit and the funder are utilizing. And now that we're talking about it, I think I deleted something I wasn't supposed to, because because we also had our little like perspective budgeting thing. I didn't say that, so I need to figure out how I deleted that, where that wasn't supposed to go. And then our mechanism for ongoing review, this is the old one that we already completed. And then at the end, so I'm going to come with a proposal. It's going to take me another probably 24 hours to do this piece, but I'm going to come with a proposal to graph this instead of coming with a blank sheet. I think that'll be helpful. And kind of trying to do a little bit of this differentiation where we think something is more administrative, something is more legislative, things to do now, things to do later. Like I think that like that stakeholder group to look at DAS materials, I feel like is one of those things that we could kind of put on the administrative side. Obviously the statute is thing that goes on the legislative side. And then, so I feel like I can kind of vaguely at least put everybody in one box to begin. And then kind of have that spark conversation for, you know, do we want to move something into a different box?
So can we do this quadrant with like wages and full cost recovery and, you know, label each one of them and then just move them around?
Yes, so that's what I'm proposing to do. I'm going to come with all of them already kind of set up. So they won't say rec X and X. They'll say like the stakeholder group or the new revised statute. And then because I'm also aware that like some of these things will live in multiple boxes, like I think, for example, like the statute one is actually both, it's calling for both legislative and administrative work, right? Because it's calling for the statute, which is a legislative item, but then the rulemaking is an administrative item. So there are going to be things that are going to end up in multiple squares. But I'll probably start with just putting everything in one quadrant and then like let the conversation duplicate as necessary. But I haven't quite gotten there yet. So that's why my presentation still has X's and L's and B's. And then the last one is, so this is kind of some narrative elements. These are things that we've already talked about that have already kind of come up in a lot of these conversations. And then this is where I would let folks know like, hey, we've got this survey thing, you know, please take a few minutes to do that. And I think I can show you all what that currently looks like. Are you seeing the survey or are you still seeing the survey? Okay, so yeah, I made sure for all of our, you know, good public meetings law, everyone's got to have their email and their name. And then it's not an anonymous survey. And then the questions are just very vague, like how recommendations will improve or which recommendations will improve. So that way people can kind of talk a little bit about where they see some of the most important changes. What has been meaningful about the experience, just like going through this process of reviewing all of this information and bringing a lot of these stories of how folks are being impacted in the work. And then just kind of like an open-ended, any other takeaways you want a reader, should be no, not now. But so then that would be kind of the thing that we would send out afterwards for folks to take a look at and add some of their comments. And I put just like I put Monday, so task force would be on Tuesday, so you have a little bit less than a week to get some comments in. I'll stop there for now. Yeah, so additional thoughts, comments? What did I miss?
So we can't send that to anybody till after we vote to send it out on Tuesday?
The survey? Yeah. I think, well, I guess we could attach it to the agenda, right?
I think that would be good because I really want to go to my executive director and the past executive director and the board and say, what do you want to say?
Sure. I mean, I guess I was thinking about this as also, I mean, the quote would be from you, right? It would be like Marianne said, because I kind of imagine, you know, a lot of times in these reports, there's like these cute, they make like cute little bubbles off in the corner, a little thing at the bottom, where you can get like some of that narrative response. And I think that would just be nice to have for anyone who wants to have input and have like a quote or a line or something attributed to them. But yeah, I think it would be cool to be able to have stuff from that larger stakeholder space. So Debbie, I'm going to come back to the question I had before. Do you think that there's any weirdness with me like saying that staff can fill this out too?
I don't think so. And if there are protocols within an agency where someone feels like they should know that, right? If they can't provide a quote, or if they need to take it to their, director or whatever first, I think that's on them to either not respond or to get it approved. So I don't see anything weird or strange about it.
Okay. Cool. Let me grab my little link. And I'll put that in the chat, Amy, so that you can have it for when we send out the agenda.
And I think the really good thing about this, the more time we have, I have people with 25 to the executive director has 50 years. He's on the board. He has some things to say, and I want to listen to him. That will help form what I want to say.
I'm just going to jump back to my notes. I'm trying to figure out what happened to my missing part of a recommendation. Oh, it was in the living wages thing. That's why I don't have it. Okay. The perspective budget. Anything else from you, Marianne? Anything you'd like to see in this last one, or things to help us get closer to that wrap up?
No, I think it's good.
Getting exciting. We're getting so close to the end. And Marianne, just in support of your local work, I want to call out that I've been asked by my local county commission to come do a presentation on this in October. And so when we do that, I'm happy to share that with you, to share with your county commissioners so they can see that local governments are also having these conversations about, how to work on this. I will say that at least one staffer at the county was bummed when I said that we're not making any recommendations for counties. She was like, oh, that would have been great. It would have been helpful. No, like we're staying in our state purview, but
well, I think if we fix some of the things at the higher state level and the agency level, I think it'll flow down.
I'm hopeful some of these things can, especially I think in places where we already do joint state work. Like that's where I'm seeing the opportunity where us and the county are actually getting state funds together, and we're doing a state program together that like we can use those, like all the community action funds, a bunch of like the education funds, like those kinds of programs where it's state money but then coming to the county and then also being shared with a CBO. Like that's kind of where I'm hoping we can pull some of these and be like, well, they're trying to do some of this other stuff. And actually a couple of people that I was talking to in Washington and Multnomah County, they said that some of the rules that they have put in place, they've done because they believe it's state law that requires them to do it that way. And so I think that's also that was interesting for me to be like, well, actually, we're making this recommendation because at least one state agency said that they were already doing something like that. So I'm not sure if the law is necessarily totally holding you back. Or what, but like I think there is some questions like that where folks are wondering if they have to do things the same way a state contractor is doing it, and where those rules might actually not be like set in stone, but more perceived.
It feels like a lot of the rules are made based on fear of whatever, failure, fear of bad outcomes, fear of um, whatever. And the only thing that we really have to fear is the loss of our loved ones. The rest of it, we just need to work through and we need to question. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think has put me in the mode of also my kind of own narrative. Like, what do I want to see in some of this? And I was like writing up something the other day, and I think there are a lot of things that have just shifted with the nonprofit sector over time. Yeah, I was mentioning to another person that it, it it's getting harder and harder every year to take money from different funders and do the same body of work. And that used to be very, very standard. But now lots of funders are like, well, I don't want to pay for something that someone else is already paying for. I want you to do a new thing or like grow a thing or start a new thing with that money, which means that then you can't subsidize funders against each other. So they have a false sense of how much it costs to do the work because someone else has been subsidizing it. And unbeknownst to them, that other funder doesn't want to subsidize them anymore. Right. So that's one of those elements. Volunteers, I think, is another big element. Like with the increase of insurance coverage required to even have volunteers in your program, COVID, I think, has had a huge impact on a volunteer community force. And certifications, trainings, and all those kind of requirements. I think there's a lot of work that we do that 10 years ago, I would have had a team of both volunteers and staff doing that work. And today, like I couldn't do that, especially when I think about like school-based work. Like I used to run an after-school program and I had 10 paid staff and like 30 volunteers. And I don't think I could do that same program now because I would need to have so much insurance to cover all those volunteers. And I'd have to do so much training with all of those volunteers before they could even like step foot in a room with a child. And so we just don't do volunteers anymore. We just have paid staff in those programs. And those are just like progressions that have happened over time as we've professionalized the sector, as we've increased our expectations of what the work can do, which are all good things. But it does mean that these like kind of hidden things that we're subsidizing the work just don't really exist anymore. And I think it's a good opportunity to kind of unearth some of those things. Like, why is this happening, right? Why does it feel like we have to, like, that this isn't working like it used to? It's like, because it's not working like it used to. I mean, I have a master's degree in nonprofit management at this point, right? Like, this is not your voluntary sector with, housewives who are very smart and capable and didn't have a job, right? Like, it's a very different body of work. And I think NAO's report too, showing that like over 50% of the workforce have college degrees and over 60% of the workforce are women. That like this is a highly educated group of people who have anywhere from 10 to hundreds of thousands of dollars of student debt that they're trying to pay back on these salaries. That's more for my narrative thing. All right, well, Amy, I think I'm going to do just a little bit of light editing on these slides, and then I'll send them to you as well
Okay.
to go out with the agenda. Any other questions on the pieces of the agenda?
I just have one clarifying question for you, Mercedes. When we are discussing the task force recommendations, do I need to mark those as vote items?
Yes.
Okay, we will be taking votes then on all of those pieces. So there's the payment models, uniform application, standard contracting, and we'll have a break. And then we go to sufficient reporting requirements and changes to state procurement practices. And those are all vote items except for the break.
Yes.
Very good. Okay, I will just make sure to note that. Otherwise, I think we're in good shape. Oh, I'm sorry, one last thing. On the survey, you'll be discussing that as an agenda item as well, even though we're sending out the link prior to the meeting. We'll still leave it as an agenda item.
I think maybe we can put it, yeah, like in the maybe the look ahead. We usually have like a little section of look ahead. So we can put the written report, the survey, and the September meeting can all be part of that.
Okay, very good. And then we'll say, oops, September meeting.
Yeah. And
Okay.
and yeah, and it sounds like our September meeting will mostly be a little bit of a wrap up. I feel like I have to do something. Like, how do we make it feel like a good closing?
It's almost like a celebration as well as a wrap up, celebrating the work that we've done.
Yeah, I have to think. What would be an interesting thing to do that makes it feel like we finished?
Two of the fun things that we've been asking other people, the first one was if you could be at any historical event with your eyes and ears, what would it be? And the second one question is if you could go back and whisper in your own ear, what advice would you give yourself? And I love how you find out so much about people just by asking those questions.
True.
And I think they're useful just for connecting people that they can use in their personal life with their kids and their husband or whatever, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you all for being here. Help to complete these last few slides to get us over the finish line. Yeah, and I don't think I'm just gonna check my schedule really quick, Amy. Okay, I don't have anything else for the rest of the day, so I'll be able to finish up some little tweaks on these slides and send them to you in probably about an hour or so.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you
Gotta
so
run.
much. Take care. Bye-bye.